Paused a second, but isn't something like that really? It's such a simple and effective and easy way to actually build and establish character relationships without really having to put much effort into it. Like even after that first scene when they are in the kitchen, and the guy pretending to be a count comes in, they have the conversation. You automatically establish a relationship between all of them just from that one scene alone, and you can then just dive straight into this plot line of going to this house and all that, and until the first twist, you are expecting most of the story to be, the climax will come when they go to the mental asylum or whatever, and then you're completely thrown off course into this second story. So it rocks you slightly, but at the same time, you're very accepting of it because it's executed so well, and it's only like about 50 minutes in, probably something like that.
I quite like the way the story, like they tie off the story quite well. So you almost don't feel like you need to go back and rewatch. Because sometimes films with the twist, I like to go back and rewatch and try and find any continuity errors, or like just find points where they've alluded to it earlier in the movie, the twist that's coming. But I quite like the fact that they go back and have these flashbacks, so it feels like, because it is a really nice sort of meandering storyline, that they tie it off quite nicely at the end as well.
Yeah. I think and you're just happy to go along with that, really. I was almost just happy and more inviting more to come as it kept going on, because of all the various twists and turns.
It's funny that I think we all had the same thing where we reached the end of the first act and we felt kind of like fully satisfied, almost kind of complete on that just being the story arc, and it could have gone on in a linear fashion from there. Like I actually did feel that, and it's only in hindsight now, having seen the second act and the third that follows, that you start to appreciate like how many pieces were missing from the story that you were being told. But he did. I think that's the clever part of it. He gives you just enough of the narrative, as I was saying before, to be able to piece something together and still get the hit when the twist comes, but then leaves enough unexplored for you to then revisit, to then adds a whole extra dimension, extra richness to the story and to the dynamics and relationships between the three of them, that you kind of leave out of it going like, fucking, like, wow. And there's a whole kind of backstory bit as well, which then gets added in as well, that you kind of feel like, how was I so complete with it without having known all of this stuff from the first act?
Just one.
But yeah, that's what I mean. I think just the beauty of the film was just the expert storytelling.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like any of the second chapters were like superfluous to the storyline though. I thought they added stuff. I really liked the third and final scene with the octopus in the basement. That was by far my favourite scene. I think I'd always go into like Korean films, like Japanese films, expecting that level of, I guess gore's the wrong word, but unusualness. I don't really know how you describe it, but yeah. But seeing the octopus in the tank at the end and him with the cramp and the mercury cigarettes, I really, really loved that scene. I think it made it less almost like a slightly darker children's tale into a more adult film.
It's also an aspect like that those three things you just mentioned there, they're three things you just wouldn't really find written into a Western story, like the mercury cigarette octopus and like doing what he did to him in the basement and stuff. I think you'd really struggle to find. It's probably, like you said, in terms of almost like cultural impact on the story itself, having those features as such. It makes it really unique, and maybe it's because of my naivety towards Asian films or anything like that, and just need to educate myself more on all of that and that culture, maybe full stop. But as someone who was quite oblivious to any of that, it was really, really great to watch and really to observe for some of these aspects for the first time in terms of cinema.
Yeah, what is it with the Koreans and like really elaborate house takeovers? It seems like they're really into it.
It's a societal issue.
They do have a great film culture there, don't they? Though?
Yeah.
Really good, yeah.
They have a great arts culture in general, which is kind of surprising since they're such like a young nation.
This is what I mean as well.
Their economic makeup's really weird. It's like five or six companies that basically government backs and make up like 80% of the GDP, and it's all like really ordered and structured and everything, and yet they've got this kind of thriving kind of cultural underworld, I guess.
This is what I mean in terms of like it's so alien to a lot of audiences seeing things like this on screen that makes it all the more better, I suppose, and more exciting to watch. It's different. It's a change, and I'm really welcoming to that because it broadens the horizon even further into things that I've never watched before.
It seems like they're also really good at from the films I've seen, from the Korean films that I've seen, or even the Japanese films I've seen. It seems like they're really good at having the storytelling, like the linearity and the structure of the storytelling, like reflect the actual subject matter of the film. So in this, for example, they're all really calculating and manipulative and like coercive, and there's a lot of misnomers. Like they send you in the misdirection, and the film itself is doing that the whole way through. You know, the actual storytelling is achieving that with me. You know, as an active like audience member watching the film and trying to understand it. It feels like I'm being manipulated all the time or mastered all the time, in the same way that the characters in the film are. So I think that's a really interesting. Being able to have like the storytelling form reflect the content, the subject matter, isn't something that a lot of Western films are conscientious of or conscious of, and these most certainly are. So,
do you think it was tailored or catered for a Western audience at all?
What tried to be?
Yeah, no, to have success in, because like we're saying, it's different. To have success, do you think it needs to be tailored at all? Because I'm just thinking about it now. I need a few minutes to think about whether it was or not at all catered or tailored to a Western audience, or to appeal to a Western audience, or do you think it was quite honest to its origins and its?
I'd say definitely not. If you watch Old Boy, which came before this, I think that was early noughties. That is in no way tailored to a Western audience. It's sick and perverse, and this is to an extent. But I think that's the reason it is successful, because it's unusual. Some of the highest films that we've been rating on this have all been foreign language. Like the reason we liked Amelie was because it was very culturally French and not old Hollywood, and this isn't either. I don't think. I don't think Hollywood does kind of dark, sinister films that well. Like
I think Old Boy's your case in point there, because haven't they done a remake of it? I'm pretty sure they have done a remake of Old Boy, and it's meant to be fucking terrible.
It's atrocious.
They always are, aren't they?
It's awful. They did. Yeah, it's awful. But yeah, like Scandies and Asian cinema always do this kind of dark, sinister, brooding storytelling really well. Like, I don't think Western cinema does it as well, because it's almost too polished. Whereas this is quite. It's like a low budget film really, but there's no kind of polish on it, but it just tells the story really well, and it's themes that would never come up. You would never get tentacle porn in a Western film.
Do you think it wasn't polished?
I thought it was very polished.
I thought it was very polished. I thought it was quite exceptionally polished, actually. Huh?
Yeah.
It was very like refined. It was very well cut, and it was like it just knew what it was, and it strived to be exactly that. I don't think that it was, I don't think if you mean, when you say polished, if you mean that it kind of tried to smoothen over the sharp edges, it definitely didn't do that at all.
Yeah, it was bigger budget, like tones down everything a little bit,
Yeah.
like the like the scene where she's hanging herself, and then the Suki's holding her up, and then she tells her that she was actually tricking her, and then there's like the massive overacting of her anger, and then she's like, "Oh, sorry, miss, I'm sorry, miss," and then goes and grabs her again. Like that, it's not like it's not overly kind of direct. It feels quite like Asian cinema sometimes, where there is that kind of hyperacting.
Yeah, I guess that's the sort of humour I was sort of referring to. Sort of you get sort of elements of that in Parasite. That kind of humour at moments, but I guess it depends how the film carries as a whole. And if it carries very well, it's very easy to watch, and yeah, it finds its place within a film like this, like The Handmaiden. Is there anything that people didn't like then?
Well,
sorry, Liam.
Sorry, I completely interrupted.
No, go on.
I said I thought the soundtrack was pretty brilliant as well.
Mm.
It was them like really tense, like nervous strings, and then in the more emotional scenes there was a more kind of like orchestral piece. And I thought the contrast between those played out the emotions of the scenes very well.
I think it did a lot of the elements really well. Like I thought the cinematography and the editing was really, really, really expertly done. Really good, which makes it all the more easy to watch.
It was beautiful. I think there was some scenes like when they were showing you around the grounds of the house, like considering it was confined within that kind of small sphere for the majority of the film. I think he managed to pull together a lot of beautiful shots. Like I had filmed myself a couple of times, just being like, you know, this is an incredible composition. Like, I'd love to snap this shot or something like that. It was really, 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 really nice.
Yeah, I agree. I don't normally like films where they're set in one scene or one aspect. Like I normally find them a bit boring, to be honest. But I did with this.
Yeah, that's another point as well, isn't it? It's like how small but big did the world feel being filmed? Basically, the whole of the first act was just within the walls of that house, wasn't it? And the grounds of the house. It only branched out later on. But it's again just another really good job on all of that. I'm just seeing who did the cinematography. Was there anything that people disliked?
I'm trying to think. I don't know whether there was anything I particularly disliked. Do you know what? I'm so intrigued as to what you've seen and what we have in Rooney with that extended edition, because I honestly don't get the impression that it didn't feel overlong at all for me with the cut that we've seen. Like, in fact, and to the point around it feeling polished, it felt like everything was super deliberate, and so everything was there for a reason. And after the first act, you kind of know you're being coerced and guided through the rest of the film, and so everything felt like it had a place. So I'm intrigued to know what they didn't include within that theatrical cut, and whether that would potentially be something for me to go back on and say, actually, yeah, I would have. That he made the right decision. I would have left that out. Or
40 minutes, a lot of content.
Yeah, because that is a lot. That is a lot of extra stuff that he's put in there.
I will say that it did feel, the way that you've just described the theatrical cut, it still felt that way with the extended cut. It was more that after like 2 hours of watching this film, I'd got a sense of what the kind of idea, like the kind of idea of the film was already, like the kind of backstabbing nature of it all, and that things were going to loop around, and whatever it was expressing, an hour and a half, 2 hours in, I'd already got. So although the loose ends were tied up well and there weren't necessarily any extraneous scenes, it was just that I think it had run its course by the time that, it had long since run its course by the time I'd finished. But there's no that it's hard, it would be hard for me to even.
We can't without any exposing.
Which actually speaks to probably how, because if the scenes were extraneous and they felt extraneous, I'd be able to tell you. Did you see this one? Because it didn't feel like it was a part of it. It still felt seamless. It still felt like a seamless story with a beginning, middle, and an end. Mm-hmm. And I only found out that it was an extended edition when it said at the end credits, extended edition of The Handmaiden. So.